Um, Hello guys. Today I'm gonna be teaching. Well, this is my first video, so I'm a little nervous, but I'm gonna be teaching the basic input and output in C, the syntax and everything that has to do with the basic input and output in C, because it can be a bit confusing how you're supposed to use the our input and output functions of C. So this lecture is part of the ALX Africa program. So if you are part of the ALX Africa program, you might wanna subscribe to this channel because I'll be posting a lot more videos on programming and everything that has to do with ALX. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I've prepared a PDF. We're not going to be really coding today. I'll just be explaining the basics of the input and output, because it can be a bit confusing for most people. So I've prepared this PDF to kind of guide us on our learning path. So the name is Leslie Molina, which is my name. And the PDF is more on programming, on C programming language, basic input and output. So next page, input and output in C programming language. So the input and output, we're gonna start with the input. So the input would mean collecting user data. So whenever they talk about input in programming, they will talk about, you see, when you have to apply or give data that the computer can use or process. This would be maybe giving your Google Gmail account. That's input. That's where the machine collects information that it can use in its algorithm from the user. That's the input. It's what it's taking from the user. So how do we collect data as programmers? We're learning how do we collect data? How do we tell the machine to collect data from the user as programmers? So the syntax for input would be scan meaning take user value, scan F, we have the control string, okay, remember that for later. And then we have the argument, okay. The scan F, sorry about that. Sorry about that. The scanf function is used for collecting user data. Okay, so it's a function that is used for collecting user data. As I've said before, the user would enter a of a specified, okay, understand this point. They would enter a value of a specified data type. Data type, we're talking about variables. What kind of variable are we talking about? There's different kinds of variables in C programming. We're still gonna learn a lot more about that. We have integers, would be just any integer, negative or positive numbers. We have floating data types. Floating data types would be numbers with a decimal point or decimal numbers. Those are called floating data types. We have characters. Characters would be A, B, C, D, E, just any kind of letter that would be a character, a single character. We have strings, which would be a string of characters, a string of characters, like a statement or a word or a name. Person's name would be a string of characters. We have an array, we have objects, and we have many other data types. Those are data types, the kind of data. What kind of data? Is it a floating point number, which is a decimal number, a number which has a decimal point, which could be 0, comma, that's a floating point number, or 1, comma, to the decimal point. We have an integer number. An integer number would be just any number, any negative or positive number is called an integer number. So scan function is used to collect user data. We use it to collect the user's data, and we have to specify what kind of data we are collecting. You can't just have a user enter a name or a number which is written in the English language. Like instead of writing 1 as an integer, they write 1 as a word, the word 1. So the computer can't process that because it's expecting a data type of type integer, not of type string, which would be the word 1. So it cannot process, it cannot do the correct calculation, so it will return an error. So you have to be specified what kind of data type you're looking for. So the user would enter a value of a specified data type, okay, which is the control string. So this is the control string in our scanf function. Would have, this is where we specify here at the control string is where we specify what kind of data we're looking for, data type. Is it a string? Is it a float? Is it a character? Okay. And then we'd have the argument. Where will this data type be stored? Because when you collect information, you have to store it in the computer's memory. So where will the data type be stored? It will be stored in the argument. Okay, so we'd have the argument. Okay, we'll see what an argument is later, which is a variable. The argument is a variable. And you cannot collect a string data type and store it in a variable that was declared as a float. It has to be a string data type which is collected to be stored in a variable which is a string variable. Do you understand? Integer data type should be collected from the user to be stored in a variable which is an integer variable. Okay. So format specifiers. Format specifiers are the control string. So they specify what kind of data type we collect. And this is what I was talking about. So the format specifier, you can have different specifiers for different types of data types, e.g. integer data type will be basically a percentage sign D. That's an integer data type. That's the code that you're gonna write in your control string when you code it. So the integer data type we go into would be, it would be modulus. Now I'm talking programming language. Modulus D or percentage sign D, or a float data type would be percentage sign F for a float data type. Okay, these data types, format specifiers, go into the part of the function which is the control string. It's where we determine what kind of data type we're collecting from the user. Okay, so moving on. Syntax. The syntax, sorry, let me just move this here. The syntax for collecting user data in C. So the syntax will probably refer to syntax as see in English language where you say you want to write a statement. There's a specified formation of words in which you have to use to express yourself, to be able to speak to the next person. So same thing with a computer. There's a specified formation of characters. I'm going to call it characters because it's not weird, that we use to create statements that the computer can interpret, or not the computer, because computers don't read code. They read the compiler, changes our code to machine language, which then the computer can understand. Okay, so let's not confuse things there. So the syntax for collecting user data, we're still collecting, we're not displaying. So this is input and output. We're learning about input and output. So how do we collect? How do we input data from the user? So we use the scanf. This is the function, right? Which we were just talking about. It scanf is the function. This is the format specifier. Okay. What kind of data type are we collecting from the user? We're collecting an integer data type. So specifies the type of data type you're collecting from the user. It specifies, it tells the machine, oh, we're collecting an integer data type, okay? And a the variable you're storing the data type in. So once we have the data type from the user, where do we store it? We store it in this variable right here, which is a. So the syntax would be scanf parentheses. Wait, these are parentheses, open parenthesis, whatever it's called, open double quote, the modular sign, or the percentage sign. E, which specifies this is our string, control string, which specifies the type of data type we're collecting from the user. So once we have specified what kind of data type we are collecting, where are we going to store the data type we've collected? We have a closing quote. What's this thing? It's called a comma, right? Comma to separate. Okay. And then we have the variable and a. That's where we are storing the data type. So for example, the user enters 2 in the text value, they enter 2, which is indeed an integer. It will be stored in the variable a, so the computer can process whatever function or whatever steps or algorithm will be processing. Whatever thing you want to do with that variable, you would have collected it and stored it in the variable a, so you know where to find that user input. Okay, so this function will collect a user input value of data type integer and store it in the variable a. Okay, let me repeat the statement. This is a function, will collect a user input value of data type integer and store it in the variable a. So you see the syntax. Okay, that's the syntax for collecting an integer data type from the user and storing it in the variable a. Okay, moving on. So more examples of collecting user input. More examples. So we have scanf, the format specifier. What kind of data type are we collecting? We're collecting float. F is for float. Okay, float. Remember, I said float is a number with a decimal point or a floating point number, okay? 0,1, 2,5, any number which has a floating point is called a float. So we're collecting a float, we specify that in the control string. We call it the control string because it's in quotes, okay? So where are we collecting this code, this floats to? We're collecting it into the variable, we're storing it, we're taking the user's input and storing it into the variable k, okay? This will collect a value of data type float and store it in variable k, okay? And then we have scan, next we have scan character, C for character. Okay, we're storing it in variable C, which is a capital letter. Okay, so I think C is case sensitive. Okay, so small letter C and capital letter C is not the same thing. It doesn't have the same value in there. Okay, I'm not sure. I forgot what it's called, but it doesn't have the same value when it's converted into, I think it's SI, something like that, but it doesn't have the same value. So we'll learn about it later. This will call it a character data type, character, single character, which could be A, B, C, etc. up to Z, any character, to the variable C, which is a capital letter C. Okay. So scan modulus B modulus F, comma, and a comma, no, sorry, this should be and. Yeah, it should be and. It should be this sign right here. It should be and. So my mistake for that. So I apologize. And B. Okay, then we close our statement. This will collect two values. So we're collecting two values at the same time. Two values, one value would go into A, which is a integer, and the second value would go into B, which is a float. So we're collecting two values at the same time. One will be an integer, okay? The other one a float. Okay. So moving on. Output displaying data. So we're displaying data in C programming language. How do we display data? How do we show data to the user? Okay, I think you know what I'm talking about. So how do we display data? The output. Okay. Using the C programming language, the syntax is printf, so printing out information. So same with this scan F for input. We have a control string, okay? And then we have the arguments. So the syntax is pretty much the same. The only difference is the print and the scan. Okay, so we have the control string and the arguments. This one's for the output, displaying data. The printf function in C is used for displaying data taken from an existing variable. Okay, so with the scan, it takes data which doesn't yet exist in the machine, and then it stores it inside of a variable which has been declared. Okay, so the data is unknown at first. It takes it from the user, it stores it inside a variable. But with print, it takes the data from an existing value inside a variable. So the value inside that variable is known. and then it puts it into the formatter, which is the control string, and then it displays it to the user. Okay. So function printf function in C is used for displaying data taken from a variable into a specified. You have to specify what kind of data type variable you are displaying. So from a specified format control string, format control, what kind of format is it? Data can be from an integer. We know the syntax for an integer. It's modulus D, a float, modulus F, or a character, modulus C variable. So you're taking it from the machine and you're putting it out to the user. You can also just print text, regular text, without any data type specification or anything, just regular message. An example of this would be printf hello ALX Africa students. Okay, so printing out this message to console. This will print the message to the console. So we don't have to specify using the control string, and we don't need arguments. We're just printing a simple text or string of characters to the console. Okay. So syntax for displaying data in C programming. Now we've come to the syntax of it. So, sorry, excuse me. Print F. This will be just displaying data. Okay, let me move this here. Print F. Walk alone, you go fast, but walk together, we go far. This will print the message in your console. This is the message. It will just print the message. Okay. Print F, parentheses, quotes, double quotes, modulus D, which is, by now you should know, an integer data type. And where are we collecting that value from? The variable A. We're collecting the value. What is it called? Something which has track class or trackers or something like that from A to be displayed in the formatter data type of an integer data type. Okay, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. This will print the value of variable A in the formatter type integer. Okay, that's pretty clear. Print F. Print, this is a float data type, which will be printed, which will be collected from the variable B. Okay, will be taken from the variable B and printed into the float control string. Okay, so this will print the value of variable B in the formatter type float. Print modulus C. This will print the value of the variable C in the formatter type character. Okay, I think that's pretty much easy to understand. So now that you know, we'll do a quick recap of what we've learned. Quick recap. In C, we have two functions for collecting, collect, and displaying data. So an example of that would be, you see, when I did this PowerPoint presentation, I would it would say it would give me these small spaces, right, where I could write my heading and my body. It would say enter heading, and that would be it printing out a string to me without any kind of formatted data type. That's it printing out, the machine is printing out um, uh, a string with, and then I would enter kind of value, which is this, that would be um my heading, which is quick recap, okay? And then once I've entered that value, it would store it in the computer's memory. And then when I'm done making the presentation, it would display it back to me. So this is the kind of thing that's happening here. So in C, we have two functions for collecting data and displaying data. We have scan, okay, F for collecting data. We take user data and store it in a variable. And then we have printf for displaying user data taken from an existing value inside of a variable, okay? We have float, integer, character, and other control strings. We have other control strings, but we're not gonna go into those for now because I don't want to confuse, because there's so many of them. So we're just gonna focus on the ones here until we will at an advanced level of, I guess, an advanced stage in our C programming journey. To specify the type of data type we are collecting or displaying. So we have those data type specifiers or formatter specifiers. Okay. So thank you for, I would say for this is a video. I say thank you for watching, and I will be sharing this document on the description for this video so you can download it and refer to it or read on your own so that you properly understand what I'm talking about. So if you like the video or you've learned something valuable, you can like or comment, how can I improve or anything like that. Did I say anything wrong that you'd like to correct? And you could also subscribe so that you get more and more videos like this one. So, yeah, let's move on.